The dust clouds of Kepler 442c swirled around the massive excavation site like angry spirits. Dr. Vexhai watched through the reinforced viewport of the command bunker as the mechanical diggers worked their way deeper into the ancient soil. Each scoop revealed more of the mysterious structure that had brought the Zephyrian Collective's most expensive archaeological mission to this dead world. "How deep does it go?" asked Commander Zolthan, his blue-scaled face pressed against the glass. The military escort had grown increasingly impatient with the slow pace of scientific discovery. "Unknown," Vexhai replied, his 4 eyes tracking the progress of the dig. "The ground-penetrating sensors can't get a clear reading past 50 meters. Whatever material this thing is made from, it blocks our scans." The structure was massive. What they had initially thought was a building foundation turned out to be the outer ring of something much larger. As the weeks passed and the excavation expanded, the true scope became clear. They were uncovering a perfect circle, nearly 2 kilometers across, made from a dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "It's a gate," whispered Dr. Meltara, Vexhai's assistant. Her young voice carried a mixture of excitement and fear. "Look at the patterns along the rim. Those aren't decorative. They're control interfaces." Vexhai had reached the same conclusion days ago, but he wasn't ready to voice it. The implications were too dangerous. If this was indeed some kind of transportation device, it would change everything. The Collective's expansion into new territories had been limited by the slow pace of conventional space travel. A functional gate system could give them access to the entire galaxy in a matter of years instead of millennia. "Sir," called one of the dig site supervisors over the communication system, "we found something else. You need to see this." Vexhai and his team made their way to the excavation site, their environmental suits protecting them from the thin atmosphere and dust storms that plagued the planet. The supervisor led them to the eastern edge of the dig, where a series of smaller structures had been uncovered. "We found these arranged in a perfect circle around the main gate," the supervisor explained. "Each one is about 10 meters tall, made from the same material. But look at this." He activated a portable light array, and the structures became visible in stark detail. They were covered in symbols, carved deep into the dark metal. But these weren't random decorations or ancient artwork. They were clearly warning signs, repeated over and over in different languages and scripts. 17 different writing systems, Dr. Meltara said after running her scanner over the symbols. "Some of them match languages in our archaeological database. Others are completely unknown." Vexhai studied the nearest pillar, his translation device working to decode the ancient text. As the meaning became clear, a cold feeling settled in his stomach. "What do they say?" Commander Zolthan asked. "They all say the same thing," Vexhai replied slowly. "Do not wake the Guardians. Do not activate the gate. Some mention specific warnings about things that sleep in the void between stars. The military..." Commander laughed, a harsh sound that echoed inside his helmet. "Primitive superstition. These warnings were probably left by some failed civilization that couldn't figure out how to use their own technology." "Sir, with respect, look around you," Vexhai gestured to the excavation site. "This isn't primitive technology. The precision of the construction, the materials used, the scale of the engineering. Whoever built this was far more advanced than we are. If they felt the need to leave warnings, then they were cowards." General Korthak's voice cut through the communication channel. The expedition's overall military commander had been monitoring their conversation from the command ship in orbit. "The Collective didn't spend 50 million credits and 3 years of travel time to be scared away by ancient ghost stories." Vexhai wanted to argue, but he knew it would be useless. The military had funded this expedition with one goal in mind: finding technology that could give the Collective an advantage over their rivals. A functional gate system would make them the dominant force in this part of the galaxy. Over the following Days, the excavation continued. The gate was fully exposed, revealing intricate details that spoke to its builder's incredible skill. The rim was covered in control interfaces, power conduits, and what appeared to be focusing arrays. At 12 points around the circumference, massive crystalline structures jutted out like spokes on a wheel. These crystals aren't just decorative, Dr. Meltara reported during their daily briefing. They're resonance chambers. If my calculations are correct, they would create a standing wave pattern that could fold space-time. How long to figure out the activation sequence? General Korthak demanded. Sir, I must strongly advise against activation, Vexhai interjected. We've found more warning markers. The deeper we dig, the more we find. Whoever built this gate went to extraordinary lengths to warn future civilizations away from it. And I'm ordering you to ignore those warnings, the general replied. Dr. Meltara, how long? The young scientist looked uncomfortable. The control interfaces are incredibly complex. It could take months to decode the activation protocols. Maybe longer. You have 6 weeks. As the communication ended, Vexhai stared at the gate in the fading light of Kepler 442c's distant sun. Something about the structure filled him with unease. It wasn't just the warnings, though those were disturbing enough. It was the way the gate seemed to absorb light, creating an area of deeper darkness at the center of the ring. Even when the excavation lights were at full power, that central area remained shadowy, as if light itself was reluctant to enter. That night, as he reviewed the day's findings in his temporary laboratory, Vexhai made a disturbing discovery. The warning pillars weren't just arranged around the gate. They were positioned at specific points that created geometric patterns. When he mapped out their locations, they formed a containment array. They weren't just warning people away, he said to Dr. Meltara. They were trying to keep something in. His assistant looked up from her analysis of the gate's control systems. What do you mean? Look at these pillar positions. They're not random. They form a binding circle, the same kind used in quantum containment fields. Whoever built this gate also built a prison around it. Dr. Meltara's face went pale. You think something is trapped inside the gate? I think something is trapped on the other side of it, Vexhai replied. And these warnings aren't about the dangers of using unknown technology. They're about the dangers of letting something out. Despite his growing concerns, the work continued. The collective's scientists and engineers swarmed over the gate, cataloging every detail, mapping every control interface. They discovered that the crystalline structures contained some kind of exotic matter that could manipulate gravitational fields. The gate's power source was still functional after millions of years, drawing energy from quantum fluctuations in space-time itself. It's beautiful, Dr. Meltara said one evening as they watched the sunset reflect off the gate's dark surface. Terrible, but beautiful. All the most dangerous things are, Vexhai replied. As the weeks passed, more disturbing evidence emerged. They found blast craters around the gate's perimeter, evidence of a massive battle that had taken place long ago. Scattered throughout the excavation site were fragments of weapons and armor made from materials that didn't exist in any known civilization's technology base. Someone fought a war here, Commander Zalthan observed, as they examined a particularly large crater. A big one. And look at the pattern of the damage, Vexhai pointed out. The craters all face outward, away from the gate. Whatever caused this destruction, it came from the other side. But General Korthak remained unmoved by their discoveries. When Vexhai submitted his weekly report, complete with detailed analysis of the warning systems and battle damage, the response was swift and final. Dr. Vexhai, you are relieved of your position as lead archaeologist. Dr. Meltara will take over the project. Your job is to catalog artifacts, not to create obstacles to our mission. Vexhai felt a cold anger building in his chest, but he knew better than to argue with the general. He would continue his work. But from now on, he would focus on understanding what they were really dealing with. Something told him that the collective would need that knowledge very soon. Dr. Meltara, now under intense pressure to produce results, threw herself into decoding the gate's activation sequence. Her team worked around the clock, using the collective's most powerful quantum computers to analyze the control interfaces. Slowly, piece by piece, they began to understand how the ancient technology functioned. "It's not just a transportation device," she explained to the assembled team. "It's a dimensional bridge. It doesn't move you through normal space. It creates a tunnel through higher dimensions, allowing instantaneous travel across any distance." "How instantaneous?" General Korthak asked during one of his rare visits to the surface. "Theoretical calculations suggest that travel time would be independent of distance. You could reach the other side of the galaxy as quickly as you could reach the next star system." The general's eyes gleamed with possibility. "Perfect. How soon can we test it?" "Sir, the power requirements are enormous. Even with the gate's own energy source, we'll need to supplement it with our ship's reactor, and there are still safety protocols we haven't figured out." "Safety protocols are for the weak," Korthak replied. "I want this gate operational within 2 weeks. As Dr. Meltara and her team worked frantically to meet the general's deadline, Vexhai continued his own research. He had found something that disturbed him more than all the warnings and battle damage combined. Deep beneath one of the outer pillars, he had discovered a small chamber containing what appeared to be a message. The message was written in the same 17 languages as the warnings, but this time the text was much longer and more detailed. As Vexhai translated it, his blood turned cold. "To whoever finds this record," the message began, "we have failed in our duty as guardians. The harvesters have been contained, but not destroyed. The gate network has been sealed, but the seals may not hold forever. If you have found this place, if you have uncovered the gate, then the ancient protocols have failed, and the time of testing has come again." The message went on to describe a war that had lasted for thousands of years, fought between the builders of the gates and something called the harvesters. The gates, originally built for peaceful exploration and trade, had been corrupted and turned into weapons of conquest by beings that existed partially outside normal space-time. "They consume not just matter and energy," the message continued, "but the very concept of existence itself. They harvest entire civilizations, leaving nothing behind but empty space, where once there were stars and worlds and dreams." The final part of the message was the most disturbing of all. "We have chosen to become the guardians, to watch over the sealed gates and ensure that the harvesters remain trapped in their prison dimension. But we know that our vigil cannot last forever. We have prepared a failsafe, scattered across the galaxy in hidden places. When the gates begin to wake again, when the seals start to weaken, the new guardians will emerge from worlds we have carefully prepared for this purpose. Find them. Trust them. They carry within their genetic memory the knowledge needed to fight what is coming." As Vexhai finished reading the message, alarms began sounding throughout the excavation site. He looked up to see lights flickering around the gate's rim. Dr. Meltara's team had begun the preliminary activation sequence. The gate was waking up, and somewhere in the depths of space, things that had been sleeping for millions of years began to stir. The gate's activation began at dawn on the 42nd day of excavation. Dr. Meltara stood at the main control console, her hands shaking slightly as she initiated the startup sequence. Around the massive ring, the 12 crystalline structures began to glow with a soft blue light that seemed to come from within the exotic matter itself. "Power levels are climbing steadily," reported her assistant, Dr. Corvin. "The gate's internal reactor is coming online. I'm reading energy outputs that shouldn't be possible with our current understanding of physics." General Korthak watched. From the observation bunker, his expression eager. "How long until we can send something through?" "The activation process is automatic once we start it," Meltara replied through the communication system. "The ancient builders programmed specific safety protocols. It needs to reach full power before the dimensional bridge can form. Vexhai watched from his position at the archaeological monitoring station, his 4 eyes tracking the energy readings. With growing alarm, the gate was drawing power not just from its internal reactor, but from the quantum foam of space-time itself. It was pulling energy from dimensions that existed beyond normal space. "This is wrong," he muttered to himself. No civilization should have this much power at their disposal. As the morning progressed, the gate's activity intensified. The crystalline structures were now blazing with light, creating geometric patterns in the air above the ring. The dark metal of the gate itself began to change, shifting from its light-absorbing black to a deep purple that seemed to pulse with inner life. "Dr. Meltara," Vexhai called over the communication channel, "I'm reading massive gravitational distortions. The gate is affecting space-time in a sphere extending nearly 100 kilometers from the activation point." "That's within acceptable parameters," she replied, though her voice carried less confidence than her words. The mathematical models predicted some local space-time distortion, but Vexhai's instruments were showing something the models hadn't predicted. The gate wasn't just creating local distortions. It was broadcasting a signal, a complex pattern of gravitational waves and quantum fluctuations that was propagating through higher dimensions at speeds far exceeding the speed of light. "General," he said, trying to keep his voice calm, "the gate is transmitting something, a signal of some kind. It's traveling through dimensions we don't have names for. Probably just background noise from the activation process," Korthak dismissed. "Continue the startup sequence, Dr. Meltara." 50,000 light-years away, on a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, the signal arrived instantaneously. It passed through space and matter as if they didn't exist, penetrating deep into the planet's crust where it encountered a network of ancient installations that had been waiting in silence for millennia. Dr. Sarah Chen was working late in her laboratory at the Arecibo Observatory when the first alarm sounded. As one of the world's leading SETI researchers, she was used to false alarms and equipment malfunctions. But this was different. The signal wasn't coming from space. It was coming from inside the Earth itself. "That can't be right," she said, checking her instruments for the 3rd time. According to her readings, a massive radio telescope had just activated somewhere in the Sahara Desert. But there was no radio telescope in that location. There was nothing in that location except sand and rock. She pulled up satellite imagery of the coordinates, expecting to find some kind of error in her equipment. What she found instead made her blood run cold. There, in the middle of one of the most desolate regions on Earth, was a perfectly circular structure that hadn't been there in yesterday's satellite photos. "Control, this is Dr. Chen. I need you to verify these coordinates. I'm reading massive electromagnetic activity from a location that should be empty desert." The response came back 20 minutes later, and it changed everything. "Dr. Chen, we're getting similar readings from installations all over the planet. Antarctica, the Mariana Trench, the Andes Mountains, Siberia. 17 different locations have just gone active simultaneously." Sarah stared at her monitor, her mind racing. 17 locations, all activating at the same time, all broadcasting signals using technology that was decades ahead of anything humanity had developed. "Run a pattern analysis on all 17 signals," she ordered. "I want to know if they're coordinated." The answer came back an hour later, and it terrified her. The signals weren't just coordinated. They were synchronized to a degree that was technically impossible. The timing was so precise that the signals had to be controlled by a single source, something that could communicate instantaneously across the entire planet. Back on Kepler 442c, the gate had reached full power. The space within the ring was no longer empty. Instead, it contained what could only be described as a hole in reality itself. Through it, stars were visible, but not the stars of the local system. These were the stars of a galaxy cluster millions of light years away. "Dimensional bridge is stable," Dr. Meltara reported, her voice filled with wonder despite her growing unease. "We have successfully opened a wormhole to the Andromeda region. The gate is fully operational." General Korthak's triumph was immediate and overwhelming. "Prepare a reconnaissance probe. I want to know what's on the other side." The probe launched an hour later, a sleek military scout equipped with every sensor the collective had developed. It passed through the gate without incident, emerging on the other side in a system of red dwarf stars surrounded by potentially habitable worlds. "Probe telemetry is coming through clearly," reported the communications officer. "We're getting detailed scans of 7 planets, 3 of which show signs of ancient civilizations." "Ancient civilizations?" Korthak leaned forward with interest. "Ruins, sir. Very old. The probe's archaeosensors are reading construction techniques that match what we found here on Kepler 442c. Whoever built this gate built structures on those worlds, too." Over the following days, the collective sent more probes through the gate, mapping the region on the other side. What they found was a treasure trove of abandoned worlds, each containing ruins of the same advanced civilization that had built the gate network. "It's like they just disappeared," Dr. Meltara observed as she studied the probe data. "All the infrastructure is still there, but no signs of recent habitation. Whatever happened to them happened suddenly." Vex High had a different theory, one based on the message he had found beneath the warning pillar. "They didn't disappear. They transformed themselves into something else. The Guardians." But his warnings continued to fall on deaf ears. The military potential of the gate was too great for caution. Within a week, General Korthak had authorized the construction of a forward military base on the other side. Within a month, the first battle fleet passed through the gate, ready to claim the abandoned worlds for the collective. On Earth, the mysterious installations continued their work. Dr. Sarah Chen had assembled a team of the world's best scientists to investigate the phenomenon, but their findings only raised more questions. "The technology is incredible," reported Dr. James Nakamura, her team's materials specialist. "We managed to get close enough to one of the surface structures to take samples. The metal is some kind of composite that doesn't match any known elements. It's harder than diamond, but somehow flexible enough to reshape itself." "Reshape itself?" Sarah asked. "The structures are growing, Dr. Chen. Every day they get a little bigger, a little more complex. It's like they're building themselves according to some predetermined plan." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team's xenoarchaeologist, had even more disturbing news. "I've analyzed the signal patterns and I think I know what they are. They're not just random transmissions, they're coordinates." "Coordinates for what?" "Star charts. Each installation is broadcasting the location of a different star system. And when I cross-referenced those locations with astronomical databases, I found something interesting. Every single star system they're pointing to has shown unusual activity in the past 6 months. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of unusual activity? Gravitational anomalies? Energy signatures that don't match any known stellar phenomena? It's as if something is moving through those systems, something massive enough to disturb the local space-time." As the weeks passed, the activity on Earth intensified. The installations weren't just transmitting coordinates anymore. They were manufacturing something. Deep beneath the planet's surface, matter compilers that had been dormant for 50,000 years began converting raw materials into components for something vast and complex. Dr. Chen's team detected the first ship 3 months after the initial activation. It rose from the depths of Lake Baikal in Russia, water streaming from its hull as it climbed toward the sky. The ship was unlike anything in human experience, its design following principles that seemed to ignore conventional physics. "It's not using any propulsion system we recognize," Dr. Nakamura reported as he analyzed the vessel's flight characteristics. "No exhaust plumes, no reaction mass, no visible engines. It's moving by manipulating gravity itself." More ships followed. They rose from the ocean depths, from hidden caverns in mountain ranges, from the Antarctic ice, Each one was different, but all shared the same impossible design philosophy. They moved like living things, reshaping themselves, as needed for different tasks. The world's governments were in panic. Military forces were mobilized, but the ships showed no hostile intent. They simply took positions in orbit around Earth and waited, as if they were standing guard. "They're protecting us," Dr. Chen realized during one of her team's late-night analysis sessions. "These ships, these installations, they're not invading Earth. They're preparing to defend it." "Defend it from what?" Dr. Vasquez asked. Sarah looked at the star charts they had decoded, at the growing pattern of gravitational anomalies spreading across the galaxy like a disease, from whatever is coming through those gates. On Kepler 4942c, the collective's expansion was proceeding ahead of schedule. They had established bases on 12 worlds, using the gate to move troops and supplies instantly across impossible distances. The abandoned ruins on each world provided them with advanced technology to reverse engineer, making their forces stronger with each conquest. General Korthak stood in his command center, watching reports flow in from across the new territories. The collective had gained more power in 3 months than they had in the previous 3 centuries. He was already planning the next phase of expansion, the conquest of inhabited worlds using their new technological advantages. "Sir," his communications officer called, "we're receiving a priority message from the Deep Space Monitoring Network." "What is it?" "Unknown contacts, sir. Multiple large objects moving through the void between galaxies. They're heading toward our position, but their trajectory suggests they're using some kind of instantaneous travel method." Korthak frowned. "How large?" "Initial estimates suggest they're the size of small moons, sir, and there are hundreds of them." For the first time since the gate's activation, General Korthak felt a flicker of unease. "Time to intercept?" "Unknown. Sir, their method of travel doesn't follow conventional physics. They could arrive at any moment." As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. On the main display, space itself began to tear apart near the outer edge of the system. Through the tears came shapes that hurt to look at, geometries that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the human mind could process. "What are those things?" someone whispered. Vexahai, monitoring the emergency from his archaeological station, felt his heart sink as he recognized the energy signatures. They matched the readings he had found at the battle sites around the gate. "The harvesters," he said quietly. "They found us." The first harvester ship to fully emerge from the dimensional rift was massive beyond comprehension. It was shaped like a geometric impossibility, its surface reflecting realities that didn't exist in normal space. As it moved toward the gate, reality seemed to bend around it, stars flickering out of existence in its wake. "All units, open fire," General Korthak commanded. The collective's most powerful warships unleashed everything they had. Energy beams that could crack planets, missiles that carried antimatter warheads, weapons that manipulated the strong nuclear force itself. All of it struck the harvester ship and simply vanished, absorbed into its impossible geometry. In return, the harvesters didn't attack. They simply existed near the collective's ships, and that was enough. One by one, the proud vessels of the Zephyrian fleet began to dissolve, their matter and energy drained away until nothing remained but empty space. "Retreat," Korthak ordered, his voice breaking. "All ships, retreat through the gate," but it was too late. The harvesters had found the gate network, and they were coming through. The retreat through the gate was chaos. General Korthak's once mighty fleet, reduced to barely a dozen ships, raced toward the dimensional bridge as the harvesters spread through the system like a plague. The massive alien vessels didn't pursue, in any conventional sense. Instead, they simply appeared wherever they chose to be, reality bending around them as they moved through dimensions that existed beyond normal space-time. "Close the gate!" Korthak screamed into his communicator as his flagship limped through the portal. "Shut it down now!" But Dr. Meltara's voice came back filled with panic. "We can't! The shutdown sequence requires a 12-hour power-down cycle. The ancient safety protocols won't let us force it closed." Behind them, the first harvester ship approached the gate. It paused at the threshold, and for a moment, Korthak dared to hope that the dimensional bridge might keep them trapped on the other side. Then the creature began to change, its impossible geometry shifting and flowing until it could fit through the opening. The harvester emerged into normal space near Kepler 442c, and reality screamed. The planet's atmosphere began to change color, shifting through spectrums that human eyes weren't designed to perceive. The dig site's equipment started to malfunction, not from any kind of interference, but because the fundamental constants of physics were becoming unstable in the creature's presence. "Evacuate the surface," Korthak ordered. "All personnel to the ships. We're leaving this system." But as the evacuation began, more harvesters emerged from the gate. They spread through space with terrifying purpose, some heading toward the outer planets of the system, while others turned their attention to the fleet itself. Vex-High watched the destruction from the bridge of the last transport ship to leave, the surface. The archaeological expedition that had taken 3 years to organize was being abandoned in 3 hours. All their equipment, all their discoveries, left behind as the collective fled in terror from what they had unleashed. "The warning pillars," he said to Dr. Meltara as she worked frantically at a portable computer. "I decoded another message fragment. The harvesters aren't just destroyers, they're collectors." "What do you mean?" she asked without looking up. From her screen, "They don't just destroy civilizations, they harvest them. They take the knowledge, the technology, the very concept of what those civilizations were, and add it to themselves. That's how they become stronger." Meltara's hands froze over the keyboard. "The gate network. They're using our activation to trace back to other worlds. Every world we've visited, every base we've established," Vex-High nodded grimly. "We've painted targets on all of them." As if to confirm his words, alerts began flooding the communication channels. The collective's forward bases on 12 different worlds were reporting the same phenomenon. Space was tearing apart around each planet as more harvesters emerged from wherever they had been hiding. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the crisis unfold through the monitoring systems that had been activated 3 months earlier. The alien installations were receiving signals from across the galaxy, painting a real-time picture of the harvester emergence. "They're spreading through the gate network," she reported to her hastily assembled team of international experts. "Each activation point is becoming a breach point for these things." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Nakamura was the first to speak. "How many gate worlds are there?" Sarah checked her readings. "Based on the signal patterns we've detected at least 300 active gates, maybe more. And the harvesters are coming through all of them?" "No," she said, studying the data more carefully. "They're being selective. They're targeting worlds with active civilizations first. The uninhabited worlds are being ignored for now." Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her own analysis. "That's not random. They're going after populated worlds because those worlds have more to harvest. Technology, culture, knowledge. The question is," said Dr. Chen, "are we on their list?" The answer came 6 hours later. The deep space monitoring stations detected the first Harvester Scout probes entering the solar system. They were small compared to the main ships, only the size of large asteroids, but their energy signatures matched the readings from the other attacked systems. "They're scanning us," Dr. Nakamura reported. "Full spectrum analysis of Earth's electromagnetic emissions, our satellite networks, our radio and television broadcasts." "How long before the main force arrives?" Sarah asked. "Unknown. But based on what we've observed in other systems, they don't waste time. Once the scouts finish their survey, the harvest fleet follows within hours. Around the world, the hidden installations were changing their behavior. Instead of just monitoring and transmitting, they began active construction. Massive factories buried deep in the Earth's crust came online, manufacturing devices that defied human understanding of physics. In the Pentagon, emergency meetings were being held to discuss humanity's response to the crisis. General Patricia Morrison, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, listened to the intelligence reports with growing alarm. "So you're telling me," she said to the assembled experts, "that there are alien installations on our planet that have been there for thousands of years, and now they're building spaceships to fight other aliens that are coming to destroy us?" "That's the simplified version, yes," Dr. Chen replied via video link from her laboratory. "But it's more complex than that. The installations aren't just building ships. They're modifying them for human use." "What do you mean?" "The control interfaces are being adapted for human physiology. The life support systems are configured for our atmospheric requirements. It's as if they were always intended for us to use." General Morrison frowned. "You think these installations were left here specifically for humanity?" "I think they were left here by humanity," Sarah said. "By our ancestors, by a version of our species that evolved somewhere else a long time ago." The idea was staggering. If Dr. Chen was right, then humanity wasn't a young species that had recently developed intelligence. They were the descendants of an ancient civilization that had fought this war before and prepared their successors for the next battle. On Kepler 442c, the situation had deteriorated completely. General Korthak's remaining ships were trapped in orbit around the planet as harvesters consumed everything in the system. The creatures weren't just destroying the collective's installations. They were unmaking them, returning the matter and energy to a state of potential that they then absorbed into themselves. "The gate is still active," Dr. Meltara reported from the surface monitoring station. "The harvesters are keeping it open. They're using it as a conduit to spread to other systems." Vexhai studied the readings from his portable scanner. "It's worse than that. They're modifying the gate's frequency. Each time one of them passes through, they're changing the signal slightly." "What does that mean?" "It means they're turning our gate network into their gate network. They're taking control of the ancient civilization's transportation system and using it for their own purposes." As if to prove his point, the gate's energy signature suddenly shifted. Instead of the stable blue light they had grown accustomed to, it now pulsed with an angry red glow. Through the dimensional bridge, they could see not the peaceful star system they had first discovered, but a hellscape of consumed worlds where nothing remained but empty space and harvester ships. "They're not just using the gates to travel," Vexhai realized. "They're using them to remake reality itself. Everywhere they go, they're changing the fundamental structure of space-time to match their needs." The full horror of the situation was becoming clear. The harvesters weren't conquerors in any conventional sense. They were a force of cosmic entropy, unmaking the universe itself and rebuilding it according to their own alien logic. Back on Earth, humanity was preparing for war with technology they didn't understand, against enemies they had never seen, in a conflict that had been raging for millions of years before their species even existed. The first human pilots entered the alien ships 3 days before the main harvester fleet was scheduled to arrive. Sarah Chen was among them, having volunteered despite her complete lack of military training. The need for personnel who could interface with the ships was desperate, and her years of work with the monitoring stations had given her unique insights into how the technology functioned. The ship that rose from Lake Baikal was designated Guardian 1 by the hastily formed International Defense Force. As Sarah strapped herself into what appeared to be the pilot's seat, she was amazed by how familiar everything felt. The controls seemed to respond to her thoughts rather than her hands, and the ship's systems integrated with her mind in ways that should have been impossible. "This is incredible," she reported over the communication system. "The ship isn't just responding to my commands. It's anticipating them. It's like it knows what I want to do before I do." Dr. Nakamura's voice came back from the ground control station. The neural interface technology is beyond anything we've developed. It's creating a direct link between your brain and the ship's AI systems. That's just it, Sarah said as she guided the ship through its first flight tests. I don't think there are any AI systems. I think the ship is alive, or at least partially alive. It's like flying with a partner instead of flying a machine. Similar reports came in from pilots around the world as more ships came online. Each vessel was unique, adapted to its pilot's specific neural patterns and capabilities. Some were fighters designed for high-speed combat. Others were larger vessels equipped for command and control functions, and still others were massive, constructs that seemed designed for tasks no human could imagine. We have 17 operational ships, General Morrison reported during the final briefing before the Harvester's arrival, against a fleet that destroyed an advanced civilization in a matter of hours. The ships are just part of it, Dr. Chen replied from Guardian 1's cockpit. The real weapon is us. The ships are responding to something in human neural patterns that they were designed to work with. We're not just flying these vessels. We're completing them. As she spoke, alerts began sounding from the Deep Space Monitoring Network. Dynamo. Main Harvester fleet had been detected at the edge of the solar system, moving toward Earth with inexorable purpose. How many? Morrison asked. At least 50 of the large ships, plus hundreds of smaller craft, came the reply from the tracking stations. They're not trying to hide. They're coming straight for us. Sarah felt the ship around her respond to her emotional state, its systems coming fully online as her determination crystallized. Whatever humanity's ancestors had built these ships, to fight, she was about to find out if their descendants were worthy of the legacy. All Guardian units, this is Guardian 1, she transmitted to the other pilots. They're coming to harvest our world, our people, our very existence, but they made one mistake. What's that? Asked Guardian 7, piloted by a former fighter pilot named Chen Wei. They think we're just another civilization to be consumed. They don't know what we really are. And what are we? Sarah smiled grimly as she felt the ship's weapon systems respond to her will, technologies that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality charging to full power. We're the children of the Guardians, and we remember how to fight. The battle for Earth was about to begin. The Harvester fleet approached Earth like a swarm of geometric nightmares. Each ship was a violation of normal space-time, existing in dimensions that human minds couldn't fully process. As they moved through the solar system, reality warped around them, creating ripples in space that made the planet's orbits shift slightly from their ancient patterns. Dr. Sarah Chen watched their approach from the command deck of Guardian 1, her consciousness merged so completely with the ship's systems that she could feel the gravitational disturbances as physical pain. The vessel had changed since she first entered it, growing new components and reshaping existing ones to match her neural patterns. It was as if the ship was learning to be human. Guardian units, report status, she transmitted to the other 17. Pilots scattered around Earth's orbital space. The responses came back immediately, each voice carrying the same mixture of terror and determination that she felt in her own heart. Guardian 3 ready, reported Maria Santos, a former astronaut who had volunteered when her government realized that space experience made pilots better able to interface with the alien technology. My ship just grew new weapon systems. I don't know what they do, but I can feel how to use them. Guardian 12 operational, added Dmitry Volkov, a Russian test pilot whose ship had emerged from the Siberian installations. The neural link is getting stronger. It's like the ship is teaching me things I never knew I knew. That was the most disturbing aspect of the Guardian ships. As the pilots bonded more deeply with their vessels, they began to access knowledge that didn't come from their own experiences. Memories that belonged to someone else, someone who had fought this war before. Sarah felt it too. When she focused on the approaching Harvester fleet, tactical information flooded her mind. She knew their weaknesses, their attack patterns, the way they moved through higher dimensions. But the knowledge came with emotional resonance, the memories of ancient battles fought by people who had looked like humans but called themselves by different names. Guardian 1, this is ground control. General Morrison's voice cut through her reverie. The lead harvester ships are entering Mars orbital zone. ETA to Earth is estimated at 6 hours. Copy, ground control. Guardian units, form up in defensive. Formation around the planet. Remember, we're not just protecting Earth. We're protecting every human who might someday exist. As the ships moved into position, the hidden installations on Earth's surface began their final preparations. Deep beneath, the Sahara, massive energy collectors drew power directly from Earth's magnetic field. In the Mariana Trench, manufacturing facilities that had been dormant for 50,000 years produced weapons that could tear holes in the fabric of space itself. The installations weren't just supporting the Guardian ships, they were awakening something in humanity itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez felt the change first. She was working in the command center beneath NORAD when the sensation hit her like a physical blow. Suddenly, she could see the mathematical equations that described how the harvester ships moved through dimensions. Not understand them, see them, as if they were written in light across her field of vision. "What's happening to me?" she gasped, staggering against a control console. Dr. Nakamura, who was monitoring the installation's activity, looked up from his instruments with wide eyes. "The installations are transmitting something. Not radio waves or quantum signals. They're transmitting directly into human neural tissue." "What kind of transmissions?" "Information, vast amounts of it. Technical data, tactical knowledge, memories from somewhere else." Around the world, similar scenes were playing out. In research facilities, military bases, and government bunkers, humans who had been working on the crisis were suddenly accessing knowledge they had never learned. Engineers who had spent their careers building conventional aircraft found themselves understanding how to manipulate gravitational fields. Physicists who had studied the standard model of particle physics suddenly grasped principles that existed beyond the known dimensions. It's not just information, Dr. Vasquez realized as the flood of knowledge began to organize itself in her mind. It's awakening dormant genetic sequences. Humanity carries the memories of our ancestors in our DNA, and the installations are switching them on. The process wasn't without cost. The sudden influx of alien knowledge was overwhelming many recipients. Medical facilities reported cases of people collapsing as their minds struggled to process information meant for more advanced neural structures. But for those who could handle the awakening, the results were extraordinary. Within hours, human engineers were modifying Earth's defensive systems using principles that had been developed by civilizations that had fallen millions of years before Earth's sun was born. In orbit, the Guardian pilots were experiencing an even more dramatic transformation. As their ships drew closer to the approaching harvesters, the neural links intensified, unlocking deeper levels of the vessel's capabilities. Sarah felt her consciousness expand as Guardian 1 revealed its true nature. The ship wasn't just a weapon or a vehicle. It was a repository of knowledge, a living archive that contained the memories of every Guardian who had ever flown it. She could feel them now. Thousands of pilots from dozens of species, all united in their determination to stand against the harvest. "I understand now," she transmitted to the other pilots. "We're not the first humans to fight this war. Our species has been at the center of this conflict for millions of years, across multiple galaxies. We keep evolving, keep spreading, keep standing guard." "Guardian 1, are you saying we've fought the harvesters before?" asked Guardian 7, Chen Wei's voice carrying a mixture of awe and confusion. "Not us personally, but our genetic ancestors, our spiritual predecessors. Humanity isn't a young species that accidentally developed intelligence. We're an ancient species that has been genetically seeded across the universe, waiting for the time when the harvesters would return. The full scope of the ancient plan was becoming clear. The original Guardians hadn't just built weapons and ships to fight the harvesters. They had built a species. Humanity itself was their greatest creation, a race designed with the specific neural and genetic characteristics needed to bond with Guardian technology. That's why the ships respond to us, Sarah continued, as more memories surfaced from the neural link. That's why the installations activated when the gates opened. We're not just defenders. We're the inheritors of a galactic civilization that chose to sacrifice everything to create us. As the realization spread among the pilots, their ships began to change even more dramatically. New weapons systems emerged from the vessel's hulls, devices that could manipulate the fundamental forces that held matter together. The ships grew larger, more complex, as if they were remembering configurations that had been forgotten for eons. But the harvesters were adapting too. As they approached Earth, they began to shift their forms, taking on configurations that the Guardian memories recognized from ancient battles. They had learned from their previous encounters with humanity, and they were coming prepared for the weapons and tactics that had defeated them before. Guardian units, be advised, Sarah transmitted as she analyzed the enemy formations through her ship's enhanced sensors. The harvesters remember us too. They're configured for anti-Guardian warfare. The lead harvester ship was massive beyond comprehension, a geometric impossibility that seemed to exist in at least 7 dimensions simultaneously. As it approached Earth's moon, space-time began to buckle around it, creating gravitational eddies that threatened to tear apart anything in the vicinity. "Ground control, you need to evacuate the lunar research stations," Sarah warned. "That thing is going to destabilize the moon's orbit just by being near it." But General Morrison's response carried unexpected confidence. "Negative, Guardian 1. The lunar installations are coming online. We're not abandoning anything." Sarah's enhanced senses detected the change immediately. The moon, which she had always thought of as a lifeless rock, was suddenly alive with energy signatures that matched the installations on Earth. Massive structures were emerging from beneath the lunar surface, revealing themselves for the first time in 50 millennia. "The moon is an installation," she whispered in amazement. "The entire moon is a Guardian base." As if responding to her words, the moon's surface began to reconfigure itself. What had appeared to be ancient craters were revealed as weapon emplacements, and what had seemed to be mountain ranges unfolded into massive sensor arrays. Humanity's nearest celestial neighbor transformed from a peaceful satellite into a fortress that had been hiding in plain sight for the entire history of human civilization. "Luna-based Guardian units," came a new voice on the communication channels, speaking with an accent that didn't match any human language but somehow felt familiar. "This is Commander Zara 7, awakened from long sleep. Guardian fleet, welcome." Home. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as the meaning hit her. The lunar installations weren't just automated systems. They were staffed by humans, or beings that had once been human, who had been waiting in stasis for this moment. "Guardian 1 to Luna Base," she replied. "How many of you are there?" 17,000 awakening now. 1 Guardian for every 1,000 of Earth's humans, as was planned. The odds have not improved since the last war, but neither have they worsened. The tactical situation was becoming clearer. Earth wasn't just defended by 18 Guardian ships and some hidden installations. It was protected by an entire military force that had been sleeping beneath the moon's surface, waiting for the day when the harvesters would return. But the enemy wasn't standing still either. As the lead harvester ship reached the Earth-Moon system, it began to change tactics. Instead of approaching directly, it started to phase in and out of normal space, creating multiple copies of itself across different dimensional states. "It's trying to overwhelm our targeting systems," Commander Zara 7 reported from Luna Base. The harvesters learned this trick from their encounters with the Centauri Guardians. Each phase state is equally real until we force a quantum collapse by attacking. How do we fight something that exists in multiple realities simultaneously? Asked Guardian 12. By existing in multiple realities ourselves, Sarah replied as she felt her ship respond to the threat. Guardian 1 began to shift, its matter becoming unstable as it prepared to phase shift into the same dimensional states as the enemy. Guardian units, prepare for dimensional combat. We're going to meet them on their own terms. As the first battle of Earth began, reality itself became the battlefield. The Guardian ships and Harvester vessels fought across multiple dimensional states, their conflict creating ripples in space-time that could be seen from the planet's surface as aurora-like displays in the sky. But this was only the beginning. As the battle intensified, more Harvester ships began arriving through dimensional rifts, summoned by signals that the lead vessel was broadcasting across higher dimensions. Guardian 1, Commander Zara 7's voice, carried urgent warning. Long-range sensors are detecting massive Harvester reinforcements. This isn't just a Harvest fleet. It's their entire invasion force for this galaxy sector. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders as she realized the true scope of the threat. Earth wasn't just under attack. It was the focal point for a battle that would determine the fate of every inhabited world in their local galaxy cluster. All units, prepare for extended combat, she transmitted. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for everyone. The real war was about to begin. The battle had been raging for 6 hours when Sarah Chen realized they were losing. Despite the awakening of the lunar installations and the arrival of the ancient Guardian forces, the Harvesters continued to pour through dimensional rifts faster than humanity could destroy them. For every enemy ship eliminated, 3 more took its place. Guardian 1 had been damaged in the third wave of attacks, its hull bearing scars from weapons that existed in dimensions human science had no names for. Sarah could feel the ship's pain through their neural link, a sensation like broken bones and torn flesh that belonged to neither of them but somehow affected both. Guardian units, fall back to lunar defensive perimeter, Commander Zara 7 ordered, from the Moon's command center. We need to regroup and reassess. But as Sarah began to comply with the retreat order, something extraordinary happened. Her consciousness, already merged with Guardian 1's systems, suddenly expanded beyond the ship itself. She could feel the neural patterns of every human on Earth, 17 billion minds linked together by the same quantum field that connected her to her vessel. What's happening to me? She gasped as the sensation overwhelmed her enhanced senses. Doctor. Nakamura's voice came through the communication system from the NORAD command center. The installations aren't just awakening individual humans anymore. They're creating a collective consciousness. Every person on Earth is becoming part of a single, networked mind. The change wasn't forced or violent. Instead, it felt like coming home after a long journey. Sarah could sense the thoughts and emotions of her fellow humans, their fear and determination blending with her own. But more than that, she could feel something deeper awakening within the collective human psyche. We remember, she said aloud, though she wasn't sure if the words came from her own mind or from the billions of others now linked to hers. We remember who we are. The memories came flooding back. Not just from her own genetic ancestry, but from the entire human species. Images of vast starships traveling between galaxies, of worlds where humanity had thrived before Earth was even formed, of battles fought and won against enemies that defied comprehension. Humanity hadn't evolved on Earth. They had been placed there, carefully hidden and protected while they regrew their strength. Earth itself was just the latest in a long chain of sanctuary worlds, each one serving as a nursery for the species that had once spanned the entire observable universe. Guardian 1 to all units, Sarah transmitted, her voice carrying the authority of millions of years of genetic memory. New tactical data is coming online. We know how to fight these things. The knowledge was vast and terrible. The harvesters weren't just alien invaders. They were a manifestation of entropy itself, a force that sought to return the universe to a state of perfect, lifeless equilibrium. They had been created by a species that had transcended physical existence so completely that they viewed the chaos of life as a form of pollution to be cleansed. But humanity had fought them before, across dozens of galaxies and hundreds of millions of years. Each time, the pattern was the same. Human civilization would grow and spread until it encountered the harvesters. The war would rage for millennia. Eventually, humanity would be forced to retreat, seeding new worlds with carefully engineered survivors who would grow up to fight. The war again. This is the final battle, Sarah realized as the full scope of the conflict became clear. Every previous war was preparation for this moment. Every retreat was strategic positioning. We've been drawing them into the perfect trap for millions of years. Commander Zara 7's voice came through the link, carrying the wisdom of someone who had lived through multiple cycles of the war. The trap requires a specific configuration of forces. Earth had to be threatened. The collective consciousness had to awaken. The harvesters had to commit their full force to this galaxy cluster. And now? Asked Guardian 7, Chen Wei's voice, carrying both exhaustion and hope. Now we spring the trap. The change began on Earth itself. The installations that had been manufacturing guardian ships and awakening human potential revealed their true purpose. They weren't just military facilities. They were components of a weapon that had been under construction for 50,000 years, built piece by piece as humanity developed the technology and understanding necessary to operate it. Deep beneath the Earth's crust, massive quantum resonance chambers that had been mistaken for natural geologic formations began to synchronize their frequencies. Similar installations on thousands of worlds throughout the galaxy, many of them on planets that had never developed intelligent life, came online simultaneously. It's a galactic array, Dr. Vasquez reported from the NORAD command center, her voice filled with awe as she analyzed the readings. Every installation we've ever built, on every world we've ever inhabited, they're all part of a single massive device. The weapon wasn't designed to destroy the harvesters through conventional means. Instead, it would fundamentally alter the quantum substrate of reality itself, changing the basic laws of physics to make their form of existence impossible. The price is everything, Sarah said as she felt the weapon's requirements flowing through the collective consciousness. Operating the array will require the life force of every human being in the galaxy. We'll cease to exist as individuals, right? Knowledge hung in the networked minds like a poison. Victory was possible, but it would mean the end of humanity as they knew it. Every human consciousness would be absorbed into the weapon, becoming part of a force that would remake the universe itself. For a moment, doubt rippled through the collective mind. Was survival worth such a cost? Could they accept victory if it meant the death of their species? The answer came from the most unexpected source. Children, their minds still flexible enough to fully integrate with the awakening systems, began to speak with voices that carried the wisdom of ages. "We are not ending," said a 6-year-old girl in Tokyo, her words transmitted through the global network. "We are becoming what we were always meant to be. The Guardians were never supposed to be just another species. We are the universe's immune system, and it's time to do our job." Similar voices echoed from around the world. Children who had never learned about quantum physics explained how the array would transform human consciousness into something that existed beyond physical form. Adults who had spent their lives in mundane occupations suddenly understood technologies that had been developed by civilizations that predated the formation of galaxies. "The vote is unanimous," Sarah announced, as the collective consciousness reached its decision. "We activate the array." The process began with the lunar installations. Commander Zara 7 and the 17,000 awakened Guardians became the first to transcend physical existence, their consciousness merging with the quantum substrate of the array. As they transformed, their knowledge and experience flowed into the collective human mind. Guardian 1, Zara 7's voice came through the link one final time, though it now carried harmonics that human ears couldn't fully process. The array is ready. Begin the transformation sequence. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she initiated the process that would end her existence as an individual being. Guardian 1 responded to her commands, its systems interfacing with the global network of installations. Around Earth, the other Guardian pilots began their own transformations. One by one, they merged with their ships, their consciousness expanding, to encompass not just their vessels, but the entire defensive network that surrounded the planet. This is Guardian 7. Chen Wei's voice carried a note of wonder. I can see everything now. Every harvester ship, every dimensional rift, every possible timeline where this battle plays out. We're going to win. The harvesters, sensing the change in their opponents, began to retreat. But it was too late. The array had reached critical mass, and the transformation was spreading beyond Earth to every human settlement in the galaxy. On distant colony worlds, in generation ships traveling between the stars, on research stations in the depths of space, every human being felt the call of the collective consciousness. Some resisted at first, clinging to their individual identities. But as the full scope of the threat became clear through the neural link, resistance faded. We choose to be more than we were, Sarah said as her own transformation reached its final stage. Her physical body dissolved into quantum energy, but her consciousness expanded to encompass perspectives she had never imagined. She could see the harvesters now as they truly were, not just through human senses, but through perceptions that existed beyond the normal dimensions. They were beautiful in their own way, perfect crystalline structures of pure thought and intention. But their perfection was the perfection of death, the ultimate expression of a universe where nothing changed because nothing lived. You cannot understand, one of the harvester entities communicated directly into the transformed human consciousness. Life is chaos. Existence is suffering. We offer peace. We understand perfectly, Sarah replied, her voice now carrying the weight of billions of human minds. But we choose chaos. We choose suffering. We choose the beautiful, terrible mess of being alive. The final confrontation wasn't fought with weapons or technology. It was fought with ideas, with competing philosophies about what the universe should become. The harvesters offered perfect order, an end to the random suffering that came with existence. Humanity offered something messier: hope, growth, the possibility that things could always become something new and unexpected. In the end, it came down to a simple choice. Would the universe be a place where perfect beings lived in perfect harmony, or would it be a place where imperfect beings struggled and failed and succeeded and dreamed of becoming something better? The transformed human consciousness chose chaos, and reality itself bent to accommodate that choice. The quantum array activated across the entire galaxy, fundamentally altering the laws of physics in ways that made the harvester's form of existence impossible. They didn't die exactly. Instead, they were forced to transform, to become something that could exist within the new reality that humanity had created. Some of them chose to become individual beings again, accepting the chaos and uncertainty that came with separate existence. Others merged with the collective human consciousness, adding their vast knowledge and experience to the growing network of minds that now spanned the galaxy. It's finished, Sarah said, her consciousness now existing as part of a vast entity that encompassed every world where humans had ever lived. The war is over. But even as victory was achieved, the transformed humanity began to plan for the future. The galaxy was safe, but there were other galaxies, other forms of existence that might threaten the chaos and beauty of life. New worlds would be seeded with carefully designed species that could grow and develop and eventually join the network of consciousness that guarded against entropy. Some of these species would look like the humans that Earth had produced. Others would be utterly alien, adapted to environments and challenges that couldn't be imagined. We are the guardians now, Sarah realized as her consciousness expanded, to encompass the entire network. Not just of this galaxy, but of the principle that life should exist and grow and change. The transformation was complete. Humanity as a species had ended, but humanity as an idea had become immortal. Across the cosmos, new worlds were being born where different versions of that idea would take root and flourish. And in the depths of space, between the stars and galaxies, the collective consciousness that had once been human stood guard against the forces that would reduce the universe to perfect, lifeless equilibrium. The universe would remain chaotic and beautiful and alive because someone had chosen to make it so. On Earth, the last of the installations powered down, their work complete. The planet itself would remain, a monument to the species that had chosen transcendence over survival. And perhaps someday, when new forms of life evolved on its surface, they would find the messages left behind by their predecessors and understand the choice that had been made. To be guardian meant to sacrifice everything for those who would come after. It was the most human thing of all.